breakfast.
Late हो गया थोड़ा My driver had taken my baby, my grandson to the park. तो आने में लेट हो गया तो मुझे कैंसिल 100 टाइम हमने भी किया था
She must have come yesterday. जैसे कुछ बोल
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you this evening. It is especially an honor to welcome our member, Ms. Aruna Rajiv Patil.
She is an actress who has worked extensively with one of our finest directors, Shyam Benegal, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, though we did expect that he would. A national award winner, she has also acted in television serials, and incidentally I have seen her since she was that big when I was dabbling in theatre myself. And now I'm inviting Aruna, the author herself, please come on stage.
Good evening. I'd like to read a few section from the preface. Actually, Aruna had asked me to read some other passages, but some of them turned out to be very harrowing to go through, and would have been even more so had I had to read them aloud. And they were personal, so I'd rather let you savor them on your own. But I consider this passage rather important because it's from the preface and it talks about herself. Before I read, I'd also like to share a few things about Aruna, the two experiences I've had working with her. 2 films, in both of which she made me do something that I'd never dreamt would ever happen to me in my life. The first was a film called Sitam, in which Aruna and the cast were directing jointly, and they came to me and said, you have to play a football. And you have to practice football for a month. So football I played as a kid and I love it anyway. So I happily practiced the football, and then they sprang the surprise when I was well and truly in the movie that I'd have to do 5 Shammi Kapoor songs as well. If they told me this before I said yes, I might not have accepted the film. Because as anyone who's seen Shammi Kapoor perform a song knows, there is no one on earth who can do it like him. So, I in fact went to meet Mr. Shammi Kapoor to ask him how he did what he did. And he just sort of laughed it off and said, look, I just loved that music, and I used to listen to it all the time. He said I had a tape recorder in my car, and I'd listen to it traveling from town to a studio wherever I had to go, and I just enjoyed it. So just try to enjoy it. Try to apply yourself the same way as you applied yourself in a film like Paar. And I was astonished to learn he'd actually seen Paar. But I did what I could. And then the second movie was Rihai, in which I was to be wooed by Himaji, which is another thing I thought never happened to me in my life. But it actually did, and I may say it was a great pleasure. It was, in fact, the second time. Himaji, the third time. Himaji and I have appeared together in a movie. One was a film called Nargis, which never got released. And the third was Rihai. The first one, even she doesn't know about, was a film called Sapnon Ka Saudagar, which was her first film, and I was in the crowd. So Aruna has made me go through two utterly unique experiences in the course of my filming career. So here's the last bit from the preface. For me, it is not possible to separate my life and my personal experiences from the films I make. It doesn't mean that all my films are biographical. I'm interested in life, people, relationships, and sometimes disturbing issues in society, and that's the kind of films I made. However, I chose to make middle cinema or middle-of-the-road cinema as I wanted an audience for my films. I've also seen how I felt alienated from my own self when I made a film to meet the demands of the producer or the market and diluted it into a degree that robbed it of its soul. Such compromises don't work for me, and I decided long ago that I would rather not make a film if there is no artistic freedom. That explains why I made fewer films than I could have. The other reason was that I was working in a male-dominated, sexist industry and did not want to compromise myself as a woman. The lack of artistic freedom is also probably why most of the directors from FTII found it hard to create their films in the commercial atmosphere of Bollywood. There were other reasons too, but she hasn't talked about them. Though the technicians from FTII got absorbed into the industry, even before they had received their diplomas, there were only a handful of directors who found their feet in Bollywood. Stories can be told in various ways, and it is not the plot or even characters, but how a writer or director views it that is central. It's also a very interesting fact, which is not in this book, that the number of Film Institute graduates in Mumbai actually making movies today, a very small percentage is from the direction course. They're either editors or sound engineers or cameramen or even actors who've turned to filmmaking, not the direction students. After my first feature film, as a woman filmmaker, I found myself going against the trend in the male-dominated industry, against the backdrop of where young women found themselves in the 60s and 70s, facing whatever was available in India for them as a future, which wasn't very much. So my struggles have been both professional and personal. After my first feature film, Shak, was released, Sahi Paranjpe, who had been doing theatre and TV, released her first film, Sparsh. Then there was Aparna Sen, who did her first feature film, 36 Choringile, in 1981. And still, for years, there were just a handful of us. And we held our ground for over so many years and made films that we were proud of. Aparna continues to do that, and I admire her immensely. I have been teaching since the 1970s, and most of my girl students veered away from features, preferring to work on ads, documentaries, and television, simply because of the way the industry operated in those days, and also because it was likely to be a long haul. Today there are women directors in every kind of film, and that for me is satisfying. Thankfully, it's not just women filmmakers, but girls from almost all strata of society who have become vocal and in carving out their own space in an unequal society.